Thank you. Mr Brogan says that the MPs can't be prosecuted as benefit cheats would be, but if there's a clear proven case of fraud or deception, why should they not be prosecuted? Are our MPs now above the law? Are they more equal than others?
No, they're not.
Ben Brogan?
Well, no. My point is that at the moment it's not quite clear whose authority is going to lead that investigation. The police is showing itself reluctant to launch inquiries against MPs, and because so much of what they are accused of doing was done under their own rules, there is a great hesitance on the part of certain public bodies to question how the sovereign House of Commons runs itself. And so I think one of the problems you're going to have is finding public authorities willing to launch those prosecutions. It would be nice to see, but I'm not convinced that we're going to get it anytime soon.
Steve Easterbrook?
I think the frustration that everyone across the country is feeling is they can see such clear wrongdoing, but then people are hiding behind we didn't break the rules, and therefore it's difficult to prosecute. In a business, if someone breaks the expenses code, it's a summary dismissal. If they and that is the information that's becoming available now, which is frustrating people, and people just simply cannot understand how the situation was set up in the first place. But I would also point out one other thing. To me, there are two different levels to this. There are those that have taken advantage of sloppy rules just by submitting receipts which are just totally inappropriate. And there's another group of people, allegedly, who are actually manipulating the rules. And that's showing a deviousness that I find unacceptable. And you know, if that was to happen in any business, and certainly in my business, if they don't break the rules, you can't sack someone. But I tell you, if someone manipulates the rules and so clearly does so, I've learnt a lot about that person.
The man at the back was saying that Parliament makes the rules. I want to take another question, but I just want to remind everybody what the guidelines say, because these are written by Parliament. And it says, expenditure when you claim to be reimbursed for it should be wholly, exclusively and necessarily incurred for the performance of your parliamentary duties. Members should avoid purchases which could be seen as extravagant or luxurious, and they should avoid getting any improper personal financial benefit. And then it ends that MPs ought to ask themselves, how comfortable do I feel with the knowledge that my claim will be available to the public? Yvonne Wade, question from you, please.
Are mock Tudor beams, moat cleaning, under bottle of gin, wholly, exclusively and necessary to be an MP?
And these are all fairly local to Grimsby, I think, aren't they? Yes. John Prescott in Hull, Mr Hogg is in Sleaford, Austin Mitchell with the gin and the whiskey in Grimsby itself. Margaret Beckett, are mock Tudor beams, or indeed hanging baskets in your garden, exclusively and necessary to your work as an MP and in line with the Green Book?
Well, I don't propose to comment on other people's claims, not least because I don't know the detail of them. Because I've learnt to be wary of just what I read in the media. But certainly from my own point of view, and this will make you even more happy than you are already, there isn't any doubt the claim that you're referring to, which related to our garden expenditure, yes, that was a mistake. It should not have been made. There you are, I told you. It was at a time when I was extremely busy, and I did something that I have hardly ever done, and now very much.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Can I just say one thing? It's not fine to heckle because it means that people at home actually can't hear what Margaret Beckett's saying. I will come to as many of you as I can, and you can applaud or show your feelings about what she says, but don't interrupt all the time because actually we won't be able to hear what she's talking about. Margaret Beckett.
And at that time, when things were particularly hectic, I did something which I've rarely done, which is I just grabbed together the relevant things and bunged them into the fees office and left it to them to sort it out, which they did. You're not supposed to do it like that. You're supposed to give it much more care and thought, but when you're particularly busy, you don't always do things perfectly.
OK. The man in the blue shirt, and then I come to the woman two away from you. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of talk about changing the system and sloppy rules. Mr Easterbrook mentioned sloppy rules, but there's nothing wrong with the system. The rules, the system for MPs was written because they're honourable members. They were, and you just read out there, was quite explicit. It has to be wholly necessary to do their job as an MP. What could be more plainer than that? They don't need scatter cushions, bottles of gin, plugs. It's not the system that's wrong, it's the people, the MPs themselves.
Theresa May?
I think, any objective person looking at some of these things would say no, they weren't necessary for to do one's job as a member of Parliament. I think one of the things that is one of the problems, though, that lies behind this is the way that these set of rules grew up. As I understand it, and I wasn't in Parliament at the time, but as I understand it, the housing allowance was introduced at a time when government was keeping MPs' salaries down. And what happened was, as a result of that, I think the culture that grew up was that this was not something that was reimbursement for costs, but it was an entitlement that MPs would go out and get. And so the whole thing came to be seen in that way. And that was wrong. And that's why what we have to do is actually make sure that in putting in place a new system and a set of rules, we're able to put a set of rules and a way of approaching it that the public, that you and that everybody watching this programme and other people can feel comfortable with and can feel, yes, we have now the trust that actually these taxpayers' money is being spent properly.
But I
don't think it's going to... I don't, by any means, think that it's going to be easy for us to regain the trust of the public as a result of what has happened. But we have to start trying to do it.
Is what you're saying, for instance, a justification for one of your colleagues, Douglas Hogg, having his moat cleaned? I mean, is that what you... I don't mean you should or shouldn't condemn him. Are you saying that was within the culture of the way that MPs' allowances were paid, that he was within that culture and was right? I notice he's paid it back, but I mean, was it right?
He has indeed paid it back. Well, if you'd listened to the first bit of my answer to the question, David, was that...
I was listening to all your answers.
For an objective look at the things that were mentioned and the moat was mentioned would say, no, that was not necessary for doing the job as being a member of Parliament. But then you went on to say this was a system that was set up under Mrs Thatcher, as it happens. Well, it was a system. Actually, I think it was set up. My understanding is it was set up earlier, but I beg to be differed by. It was changed, right? But what I was saying was, and this isn't an excuse for it in any sense at all. What I'm saying is that, unfortunately, what happened was there was an assumption from a lot of MPs that the money was there, and in some sense, it was there as an allowance that they were entitled to rather than expenses.
So it didn't matter what you wrote on the slip, really, you could get the money.
And that was wrong.
Okay.
And it was wrong, and we must accept that, and we've got to do something pretty quickly to sort it out.
A lot of people still want to come in on this. You in the front there.
The rules also state that you should be beyond reproach. I think you should feel reproachful and utterly ashamed.
The woman at the very